My ex-wife engaged in so many affairs outside our marriage, often at the same time, that she could no longer keep her story straight. Who she had talked to, what lies she had told, or where she had actually been. I was once asked to recall the name of a meal we'd allegedly eaten at a Greek restaurant I'd never visited. Thanked for a gift I hadn't bought, and blamed for missing an event I knew nothing of. Because she didn't drive, I was regularly called on to take her to or from work, and I would often get there only to see that someone else had already picked her up. I often wondered what would happen if I showed up at the same time as the other person she'd asked that day. But the truth became even clearer one time when I saw her get into another man's car and speed off while I was still far enough away to remain unseen. I followed him all the way to his house and faced them together at his front door. Sometime later, I noticed a certain number on our phone bill that she'd been texting almost 600 times in a single month. It seemed strangely familiar, and when I looked it up, I realized it was a number of one of my own friends. I already had my doubts about her infidelity, so I set up a fake account to see if I could lure the man I suspected into confessing. I succeeded in getting him to admit to the whole relationship. The moment I had that proof, I broke things off with her. Only a few weeks ago, I texted a mutual friend to see if I could use his router. When he didn't respond, and since he lives nearby, I thought I'd stop by and grab it myself. I turned down his long country drive and began heading toward the house. It takes a little while to get all the way down, and that's when I noticed my personal car. I normally drive a company van, already sitting there. A sick feeling began growing in my gut, but I told myself that since he and my wife are friends and work together, it might be totally harmless. I got out of the van and looked up to see him standing shirtless in his bedroom window. On my birthday, I woke up to find my wife of 7 years, the mother of my 2 kids, scrolling through heart emojis on Facebook Messenger with another man. I realized my wife wasn't being truthful about where she was. Our location app placed her at a restaurant while she claimed to be at work. She then manipulated me into doubting my own perception. Only 2 weeks after that, I got a call at my job from another woman telling me her husband was in a relationship with my wife. Between them, they wrecked 2 families. Becoming wary, I bought a small voice-activated recorder. One night before heading out to my hockey game, I concealed it and pressed record. When I got back, I listened and found out she was on an intensely personal phone call with a coworker. I'll spare you the graphic parts. When I presented her with the recording, she confessed to it all. I found out about my ex's cheating because of Pokémon Go, of all things. She grumbled that the game was eating up too much data. I told her she could review each app's data consumption in her phone settings. As I was showing her, I highlighted that Tinder was actually using a much bigger share. It was soul-crushing but also darkly funny. She left me when she got pregnant, sure the baby wasn't mine. It emerged that I was one of 3 possible fathers. A few years and multiple DNA tests later, we found out the child was actually mine. One day she came home from work, tossed her purse onto a kitchen chair, and it fell to the ground, scattering everything inside. Among her things was a prepaid phone. I picked it up and asked what it was for. She acted like she'd never seen it. The phone had one number saved in it. His. We moved to Texas at the beginning of the summer and enrolled our kids in Taekwondo right away to keep them active and help them meet people. Something felt off about the instructor, especially once I found out he was married to the mother of 2 other students, a marriage he had initially destroyed. It grew more alarming when he later openly dated other moms while still married. My wife of more than 20 years told me he was sensitive and that his wife just didn't get him. I knew what was unfolding and soon found text messages that showed he was openly pursuing her. I came across a notebook that belonged to my wife. On the opening page was a thorough 10-step strategy for how she planned to leave me for someone else. I simplified her plan down to just 1 step. After being married 15 years, my wife told me she wanted to split up. She came home one night after having drinks with co-workers and said we had a talk. I was totally shocked, even though things between us had been fading. I told her I'd give her the room she wanted because I loved her that deeply. She began staying out until 3 a.m., changed her phone passcode, and turned off her location sharing. I checked our phone logs and saw she was spending hours talking to a male coworker 10 years younger than her, always outside work time. I asked her about it. She said nothing was going on, and I decided to believe her because I needed to. I couldn't take the endless late nights with her girlfriends and a weekend trip with the girls, so I moved out. On Christmas Eve, I got on the computer to find a family picture for our customary yearly ornament. What I found instead was a love letter from a man at her gym. I kept looking and uncovered countless others. Over the following year, everything spiraled into a nightmare you'd hardly believe. It was a truly marvelous Christmas for me and our small kids. She had ordered DoorDash for us, but dozed off before the food was collected. I took her phone to check on the delivery and, out of routine, started closing her open apps. That's when I saw her texts were open to a chat with a man I didn't know. I found out she'd been meeting up with lots of people from dating apps. The wildest part? We were in an open relationship. I was totally fine with her seeing others, as long as she was truthful. My wife of 35 years was struggling to text our daughter on her iPhone. She passed me her phone and asked if I could figure out. It was a typical Android iPhone problem, where a message sometimes has to be sent again. I adjusted a few settings and scrolled through her recent messages to see if any had failed. That's how I found a text exchange with one of my employees. My heart sank as I read my wife's messages to him. I love you, I want you, I need you, pleading with him to come over right away. That was the final chapter of our marriage. A woman I'd shared a home with for 3 years told me she was staying at her sick mother's house. Later, her supposedly ill mother showed up at our place, searching for her. I then discovered a love letter meant for a guy from her job. I found his address and found the two of them together there. I came back from a night class to find a used condom in the toilet. She had been entertaining him while I was gone. Then, after 13 years of marriage, my wife's cousin and his friend were staying with us. When she still hadn't come to bed after 1 a.m., I went to find her. Her cousin was outside by the pool and pretended not to know where she was. I took our 2 dogs and looked through the house, eventually finding her undressed in the guest room with his friend. The next morning, she told me it was something we would all eventually laugh about. We were divorced not long after. Had you ever found out your partner was unfaithful when you least expected it? What happened? Tell us your story in the comments. If you'd like to remain anonymous, you can share your experience using the form below.